Chapter 8. How do I get rich? If you do what everyone else does, you'll wind up having what everyone else has. 165. When I'm asked, where did you learn your formula for getting rich? I reply, playing Monopoly as a kid. Some people think I'm kidding and wait for the punchline. But it is. No joke. The formula for getting rich in Monopoly is simple, and it works. In real life as well as in the game. For greenhouses. 1 red hotel. You may recall that the secret to wealth when playing Monopoly is simply to buy 4 greenhouses and then trade up for a large red hotel. That is all it takes. Kim and I took that same investment formula, applied it to real life, and grew wealthy and financially free. When the real estate market was really bad, we bought as many small houses as we could with the limited money we had. When the market improved, we traded in the 4 greenhouses and bought a large red hotel. We never have to work again because the cash flow from our large red hotel, apartment houses, and mini storages units pays for our lifestyle. It works for hamburgers also. Or if you don't like real estate, all you have to do is make hamburgers. Build a business around that hamburger and franchise it. Within a few years, the increasing cash flow will provide you with more money than you can spend. In reality, that is how simple the path to extraordinary wealth is. In other words, in this high-tech world, the principles of great wealth remain simple and low-tech. I would say that it's merely common sense. But too often, when it comes to the subject of money, common sense is uncommon. For example, it makes no sense to me to give people a tax break to lose money and spend their lives in debt, or to call your home an asset, when it really is a liability that drains cash from you every day, or to have a national government that spends more money than it collects in taxes, or to send a child to school to study so they can get a good job, but not to teach that child anything about money. It is easy to do what rich people do. Doing what rich people do is easy. One of the reasons there are so many wealthy people who didn't do well in school is because the to-do part of becoming wealthy is simple. You don't have to go to school to become rich. The to-do part of becoming rich is definitely not rocket science. There is a classic book I recommend that you read, Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. I read this book as a youngster, and it greatly influenced the direction of my life. There's a good reason why it's titled Think and Grow Rich and not Work Hard and Grow Rich, or Get a Job and Grow Rich. The fact is that people who work the hardest do not wind up rich. If you want to be rich, you need to think independently rather than go along with the crowd. In my opinion, one great asset of the rich is that they think differently than everyone else. If you do what everyone else does, you'll wind up having what everyone else has. And for most people, what they have is years of hard work, unfair taxes, and a lifetime of debt. When someone asks me, what do I have to do to move from the left side of the cash flow quadrant to the right side? My response is, it's not what you have to do that needs to change. It's first how you think that needs to change. In other words, it's who you have to be in order to do what needs to be done. Do you want to be the kind of person who thinks buying 4 green houses and turning them in for 1 red hotel is easy? Or do you want to be the kind of person who thinks buying 4 greenhouses and turning them in for 1 red hotel is hard? Years ago, I took a class on goal setting. It was the mid-1970s, and I really could not believe I was spending $150 and a beautiful Saturday and Sunday to learn how to set goals. I would rather have gone surfing. Instead, I was paying someone to teach me how to set goals. I nearly backed out several times, but what I learned from that class has helped me achieve what I want in life. The instructor put up on the board these 3 words: be, do, have. She explained, goals are the have part of these 3 words. Goals, such as to have a nice body, or to have the perfect relationship, or to have millions of dollars. Once most people figure out their goal and what they want to have, they begin listing what they have to do in order to achieve the goal. That's why most people have to-do lists. They set their goal and then begin doing. Using the goal of a perfect body, the instructor talked about the approach most people take. What most people do when they want a perfect body is go on a diet and then go to the gym. This lasts for a few weeks, and then most are back to their old diet of French fries and pizza. Instead of going to the gym, they watch baseball on TV. This is an example of doing instead of being. It's not the diet that counts. It's who you have to be to follow the diet that counts. Yet, every year millions of people seek the perfect diet in order to become thin. They focus on what they have to do, rather than who they have to be. A diet won't help if your thoughts do not change. She used golf as another example. Many people buy a new set of golf clubs hoping that they can improve their game, instead of first adopting the attitude, mindset, and beliefs of a good golfer. A lousy golfer with a new set of golf clubs is still a lousy golfer. Then she discussed investments. Many people think that buying stocks or mutual funds will make them rich. But simply buying stocks, mutual funds, real estate, and bonds won't make you rich. Just doing what professional investors do does not guarantee financial success. A person who has a loser mentality will always lose no matter what stock, bond, real estate, or mutual fund they buy. A common goal people have is to find the perfect romantic partner. But according to the instructor, most people go about it all wrong. So many people look everywhere for the perfect person, the person of their dreams. They look for the right person instead of working to become the right person. And when they finally find this perfect person, they then try to change them. The instructor suggested that the answer lies within. To improve your marriage, you don't need to change your partner. It is better to change yourself first. Don't work on the other person. Work on your thoughts about that other person. As she talked about relationships, my mind drifted to the many people I've met over the years who were out to change the world, but weren't getting anywhere. They wanted to change everyone else, but not change themselves. I snapped out of my daydream when she started talking about money. When it comes to money, many people try to do what the rich do and to have what the rich have. So they buy a house that looks rich, a car that looks rich, and send their kids to the schools where the rich send their kids. All this does is force these people to work even harder, which is not what the truly rich do. I was nodding my head in agreement in the back of the room. My rich dad did not use those same words, but he often said, people think that working hard for money and then buying things that make them look rich will make them rich. In most cases, it doesn't. It only makes them more tired. They call it keeping up with the Joneses. And if you notice, the Joneses are exhausted. During that weekend class, much of what my rich dad told me began to make more sense. For years, he lived modestly, and instead of working hard to pay bills, he worked hard to acquire assets. If you saw him on the street, he looked like everyone else. He drove a pickup truck, not an expensive car. Then one day, when he was in his late 30s, he emerged as a financial powerhouse. People took notice when he suddenly bought one of the prime pieces of real estate in Hawaii. It was only after his name hit the paper that people realized that this quiet, unpretentious man owned many other businesses and lots of prime real estate, and that when he spoke, his bankers listened. Few people ever saw the modest house he lived in. After he was flush with cash and cash flow from his assets, he bought a new large house for his family. He didn't take out a loan. He paid cash. After that weekend class on goal setting, I realized that many people tried doing what they thought the rich did and tried having what the rich had. They would buy big houses and invest in the stock market because that's what they thought the rich did. Yet what my rich dad was trying to tell me was that if they still had the thoughts, beliefs, and ideas of a poor or middle-class person and did what the rich did, they would still wind up having what the poor and middle class have. Be-do have began to make sense. The cash flow quadrant is about being, not doing. Moving from the left side of the cash flow quadrant to the right side is not so much about doing, but about being. It is not so much what the be or I does that makes the difference. It is how they think and who they are at their core being. The good news is that it does not cost much money to change your thinking. In fact, it can be done for free. The bad news is that sometimes it's hard to change your deep core beliefs about money that are handed down from generation to generation or learned from friends, work, and school. But it can be done. And that's what this book is primarily about. It's not so much a how-to book on what to do to become financially free. And it's not about which stocks to buy or which mutual fund is safest. This book is about strengthening your thoughts, being, so that you can take the action, doing, that will enable you to become financially free, having Security is the issue for ease. Generally, people who seek out the E quadrant greatly value security. For them, it is often true that money is not as important as security. They may take great risks in other areas of their lives, but not when it comes to money. Perfectionism is the issue for S's. This is a generalization, but what I have observed among people who are currently in the S quadrant but are trying to switch to the right side is the do-it-yourself mentality. They like to do it themselves because they have a great need to make sure things are done correctly. In their minds, the only way to ensure that things are done right is to do everything themselves. For many S's, the real issue is their need to be in control. They hate making mistakes, but what they hate even more is someone else making mistakes and making them look bad. This makes them excellent S's and is why you hire them to do certain tasks. You want your dentist to be a perfectionist. You want your attorney to be a perfectionist. You want your brain surgeon to be a perfectionist. That is what you pay them for. That is their strength, but it's also their weakness. Emotional intelligence. A big part of being a human being is being human. And being human means having emotions. We all feel fear, sadness, anger, love, hate, disappointment, joy, happiness, and other emotions. What makes us individuals is how we handle those emotions. When it comes to risking money, we all experience fear, even the rich. The difference is how we handle that fear. For many people, that emotion of fear generates the thought, play it safe, don't take risks. For others, especially those on the right side, the fear of losing money makes them think, play it smart, learn to manage risk. Same emotion, different thought, different being, different doing, different having. The fear of losing money. In my opinion, the greatest cause of human financial struggle is the fear of losing money. Because of this fear, people often operate too safely, or with too much personal control, or they just give their money to someone they think is an expert and hope and pray that the money will be there when they need it. If fear keeps you prisoner in one of the financial quadrants, I recommend reading Emotional Intelligence by Daniel Goleman. In his book, Goleman explains the age-old puzzle of why people who do well in school do not always do well in the real world. His answer is that your emotional IQ is more powerful than your academic IQ. That is why people who take risks, make mistakes, and recover often do better than people who learn not to make mistakes and are afraid of risk. 2. Many people leave school with passing grades, yet are not emotionally prepared to take risks, especially financial ones. The reason so many teachers are not rich is because they operate in an environment that punishes people who make mistakes. Instead, to be financially free, we need to learn how to make mistakes and manage risk. If people spend their lives terrified of losing money, afraid of doing things differently from what the crowd does, then getting rich is almost impossible, even if it is as simple as buying 4 greenhouses and trading them in for one large red hotel. Emotional IQ is stronger. After reading Goleman's book, I came to realize that financial IQ is 90% emotional IQ and only 10% technical information about finance or money. Goleman quotes 16th century humanist Erasmus of Rotterdam, who wrote in a satirical vein of the perennial tension between reason and emotion. In his writing, he uses the ratio of 24:1 in comparing the power of the emotional brain to the rational brain. In other words, when emotions are in high gear, they are 24 times stronger than the rational mind. Now, I don't know if the ratio is scientifically valid, but it does have some usefulness to show the power of emotional thinking over rational thinking. 24:1. Emotional brain, rational brain. All of us have experienced events in our lives when our emotions overtook our rational thoughts. I am certain most of us have said something out of anger that we later wished we had not said, been attracted to someone we knew was not good for us, but still went out with them, or, worse, married them, have cried, or seen someone cry uncontrollably because of the loss of a loved one, done something intentionally to hurt someone we love because we were hurt, had our heart broken and not gotten over it for a long time. There are times when emotions are more than 24:1. This can be seen in addictions, such as compulsive eating, smoking, sex, shopping, drugs. Phobias, such as fear of snakes, heights, tight spaces, dark, strangers. These and other behaviors are often 100% emotionally driven. Rational thought has little power over the emotions when something as strong as addictions and phobias are involved. Snakes phobia. When I was in flight school, I had a friend with a snake phobia. During a class on how to survive in the wild after being shot down, the teacher brought out a harmless garden snake to show us how to eat it. My friend, a grown man, jumped up, screamed, and ran out of the room. He couldn't control himself. Not only was his phobia of snakes strong, but the idea of eating a snake was just too much for his emotions to bear. Money phobia. When it comes to risking money, I've seen people do the same thing. Instead of finding out about the investment, they also jump up, scream, and run out of the room. Money manages to provoke many deep emotional phobias. I have them. You have them. We all have them. Why? Because, like it or not, money is an emotional subject. And because it is an emotional subject, most people cannot think logically about money. If you don't think money is emotional, just watch the stock market. In most markets, there is no logic, only the emotions of greed and fear. Watch a person climb into a new car and smell the leather interior. All the salesperson has to do is whisper these magic words in their ear: low down payment, easy monthly payments, and all logic goes out the window. Emotional thoughts sound logical. The problem with core emotional thoughts is that they sound logical. When someone in the E quadrant becomes fearful, their logical thought is, play it safe. Don't take risks. To someone in the I quadrant, however, that is not logical at all. For people in the S quadrant, when the issue of trusting others to do a good job comes up, their logical thought may go like this: I'll just do it myself. That is why so many S-type businesses are often family businesses. There is a greater sense of trust. For them, blood is definitely thicker than water. Different quadrants, different logic, different thoughts, different actions, different halves, same emotions. What determines what we do is how we individually respond to emotions. I don't feel like it. One way to know if you're thinking emotionally instead of rationally is when you use the word feel in conversation. For example, many people who are run by their emotions say things like, I don't feel like exercising today. Logically, they know they should exercise. Many people who struggle financially are not able to control how they feel, or they let their feelings dictate their thoughts. I hear them say, I don't feel like learning about investing. It's too much trouble. Investing doesn't feel right for me. I don't feel like telling my friends about my business. I hate the feeling of being rejected. Parent or child. Those are thoughts generated from emotions, not logic. In pop psychology, it's the battle between the parent and child. The parent usually speaks in shoulds. The parent says something like, you should be doing your homework. The child speaks about feeling and responds to the parent by saying, but I don't feel like doing it. Financially, the parent in you would say silently, you should save more money. But the child in you would reply, but I really feel like taking a vacation. I'll just put the vacation on my credit card. When are you an adult? When going from the left side to the right side, we need to be adults. We all need to grow up financially. Instead of being parent or child, we need to look at money, work, and investing as adults. And what being an adult means is knowing what you have to do and doing it, even though you may not feel like doing it. Conversations within you. For people contemplating crossing from one quadrant to another, an important part of the process is to be aware and vigilant of your internal dialogue. Always remember that what sounds logical in one quadrant does not necessarily make sense in another. Going from financial security to financial freedom is primarily a process of changing your thinking. It's a process of doing your best to know which thoughts are emotion-based and which are logic-based. If you can keep your emotions in check and go for what you know to be logical, you have a good chance of making the journey. Ignore outside influences. The most important conversation is the one you are having with yourself. When Kim and I were temporarily homeless and financially unstable, our emotions were out of control. Many times, what sounded logical was pure emotions talking. Our emotions were saying the same thing our friends were saying: play it safe, get a secure job, and enjoy life. But logically, we both agreed that freedom made more sense to us than security. In going for financial freedom, we knew we could find a sense of security that a job could never give us. The only thing standing in our way were our emotionally driven thoughts. They sounded logical, but in the long term made no sense. The good news is that, once we made it across to the other side of the cash flow quadrant, the old thoughts stopped screaming and the new thoughts became our reality. Today, I understand the emotions when a person says, I can't take risks. I have a family to think about. I must have a secure job. Or it takes money to make money. That's why I can't invest. Or I'll do it on my own. I feel their thoughts, for I have had those thoughts myself. But, looking across the cash flow quadrant, having achieved financial freedom in the B and I quadrants, I can truly say that having financial freedom is a much more peaceful and secure way of thinking. Differences between E and B. Core emotional values cause different points of view. The struggle in communication between business owners and employees is often caused by differences in emotional values. There has always been a struggle between the E and the B because one wants more pay and the other wants more work. That is why we often hear, I'm overworked and underpaid. And from the other side, we often hear, what can we do to motivate them to work harder and be more loyal without paying them anymore? Differences between B and I. There is also constant tension between business owners and the investors in that business, often called the shareholders. One wants more capital and the other wants greater dividends. A conversation at a shareholders meeting may sound like this. Company managers, we need a private jet so our executives can get to their meetings faster. Investors, we need fewer executives. Then we won't need a private jet. Differences between S and B. In business transactions, I often see a bright S, such as an attorney, put a multi-million-dollar deal together for B, a business owner. When the transaction is completed, the attorney becomes silently angry because the B makes millions and the S earns an hourly wage. Their words may sound like this. The attorney, the S, might say, we did all the work and he made all the money. The business owner, the B, might say, how many hours did those guys bill us for? We could have bought the whole law firm for what they charged. Differences between E and I. Another example is a bank manager who gives an investor a loan to buy some real estate. The investor makes hundreds of thousands of tax-free dollars, and the banker gets a paycheck that is taxed heavily. The bank manager, the E, might say, I give that guy a loan, and he doesn't even say thank you. I don't think he knows how hard we worked for him. The investor, the I, might say, boy, those guys are picky. Look at all this useless paperwork we have to do just to get a lousy loan. Emotionally volatile marriage. The most emotionally volatile marriage I have ever witnessed was a couple where the wife was a hardcore E who believed in a job for financial security, while the husband fancied himself a high-flying I. He thought he was a future Warren Buffett, but, in reality, he was an S, a commission-only salesman by profession and a chronic gambler. At heart, he was always looking for the investment that would help him get rich quick. He was all ears for any new stock offering, offshore investment scheme that promised ultra-high returns, or a real estate deal he could take an option on. This couple is still together, but I really don't know why. Each drives the other nuts. One person thrives on risk. The other hates risk. Different quadrants. Different core values. If you are married or in a primary relationship. If you are married or in a primary relationship, circle the quadrant you generate the majority of your income from. Then circle the quadrant your spouse or partner generates income from. The reason I ask you to do this is that the discussion between partners is often difficult if one partner doesn't understand where the other is coming from. The battle between the rich and the educated. There is another unspoken battlefield, and that is the difference in points of view between the educated and the rich. In my years of researching the differences between the different quadrants, I often heard bankers, attorneys, accountants, and others like them grumble that they are the educated ones, and it is often the so-called less educated person who makes the big bucks. This is the root of the battle between the educated and the rich. It's not that people in the B and I quadrants are uneducated because many are highly educated. It's just that many B's and I's were not academic whiz kids in school. For those of you who read my book Rich Dad Poor Dad, you know It's about the struggle between the educated and the rich. My highly educated but poor dad took great pride in the fact that he had years of advanced studies at prestigious schools like Stanford and the University of Chicago. My rich dad was a man who dropped out of school to run his family's business when his father died, so he never even finished high school. Yet he acquired tremendous wealth. As I grew older and seemed to be more influenced by my rich but uneducated dad, my educated dad was occasionally defensive of his station in life. One day when I was about 16, my educated dad blurted out, "I have advanced degrees from prestigious schools. What does Mike's dad have?" I paused and replied quietly, "Money and free time. More than a mental change." As stated earlier, success in the B or I quadrant requires more than academic or technical knowledge. It often requires a change in core emotional thinking, feelings, beliefs, and attitude. Remember, be, do, have. What the rich do is relatively simple. It's the be that is different. The difference is found in their thoughts and, more specifically, their internal dialogue. That's why my rich dad forbade me from saying, "I can't afford it. I can't do that. Play it safe. Don't lose money. What if you fail and never recover?" He banned those statements because he truly believed that words are powerful tools. What a person says and thinks becomes real. Rich dad firmly believed that what we said to ourselves became our reality. That's why I suspect that, for people who struggle financially, their emotions often do the talking and control their lives. Until a person learns to overcome those emotionally driven thoughts, their words do become reality. Words such as, "I'll never be rich. That idea will never work. It's too expensive for me." If they are emotionally based thoughts, they are powerful. The good news is that they can be changed with the support of new friends, new ideas, and a little time. People who are not able to control their fear of losing should never invest on their own. They really are best served by turning that job over to a professional and not interfering with them. I've met many professional people who are fearless when investing other people's money and able to make lots of money. But when it comes to investing or risking their own money, their fear of losing becomes too strong and they ultimately lose. Their emotions do the thinking rather than their logic. I've also met people who can invest their money and win constantly, but lose their calm when someone asks them to invest money for them. The making and losing of money is an emotional subject, so my rich dad gave me the secret to handling these emotions. Rich dad always said, to be successful as an investor or a business owner, you have to be emotionally neutral to winning and losing. Winning and losing are just part of the game. Quitting my secure job. My friend Mike had a system that belonged to him. His father built it. I did not have that good fortune. I knew that someday I was going to have to leave the comfort and security of the nest and begin to build my own system. In 1978, I resigned from my full-time secure job with Xerox and took the hard step forward with no safety net. The noise in my head from my fear and doubt was loud. I was nearly paralyzed with fear as I signed my letter of resignation, collected my last paycheck, and walked out the door. I had an orchestra of self-damaging thoughts and feelings playing inside me. I was bad-mouthing myself so loudly and with such conviction that I couldn't hear anything else. It's a good thing because so many of the people I worked with were saying, "He'll be back. He'll never make it." The problem was that I was saying the same thing to myself. Those emotional thoughts of self-doubt haunted me for years, until Kim and I were successful in both the B and I quadrants. Today, I still hear those words. They just have less authority. In the process of putting up with my own self-doubt, I learned to create other thoughts and statements of personal encouragement. Statements such as, keep calm, think clearly, keep an open mind, keep going, ask someone who has gone before you for some guidance, trust, and keep the faith in a higher power wanting the best for you. I learned to create these thoughts of encouragement internally, even though there was a part of me that was frightened and afraid. I knew that I had little chance of success my first time out, but the positive emotions of trust, faith, and courage, along with good friends, moved me forward. I knew that I had to take risks. I knew that risk led to mistakes, and mistakes led to wisdom and knowledge, both of which I lacked. For me, Failure would have been to let my fear win, so I was willing to move forward with few guarantees. My rich dad had instilled in me the idea that failure is part of the process of success. Internal journey. The path from one quadrant to the next is an internal journey. It is a journey from one set of core beliefs and technical skills to a new set of core beliefs and skills. The process is much like learning to ride a bicycle. At first you fall down a lot. Oftentimes it is frustrating and embarrassing, especially if your friends are watching. But after a while, the falling stops and riding becomes automatic. If you fall down again, it's not that big of a deal because you now know that you can get up and ride again. The process is the same when going from an emotional mindset of job security to the emotional mindset of financial freedom. Once Kim and I made the crossing, we were less afraid of failing because we were confident in our ability to stand back up again. There are two statements that kept me going personally. One was my rich dad's words of advice when I was on the brink of quitting and turning back. You can always quit. So why quit now? That statement kept my spirits higher and my emotions calmed. It reminded me that I was halfway there. So why turn back? The distance. Going back was the same as going forward. It would be like Columbus, quitting and turning back halfway across the Atlantic. Sometimes quitting is the best move, and having the intelligence to know when to walk away is important. Too often I meet people who are so stubborn that they keep going forward on a project that has no chance of success. The problem of knowing when to quit or when to keep going is a common problem with anyone who takes risks. One way to manage this problem is to find mentors who have already successfully made the crossing before. A person who is already on the other side can best guide you. But be careful of advice from someone who has only read books about the crossing and gets paid to lecture on the subject. The other statement that often kept me going was, giants often trip and fall, but worms don't because all they do is dig and crawl. The main reason so many people struggle financially isn't because they lack a good education or are not hardworking. It is because they are afraid of losing. If the fear of losing stops them, they've already lost. Losers cut their winners and ride their losers. Fear of being a loser affects what people do in strange ways. I have seen people who bought stock at $20 sell their shares when they reached $30 because they were so afraid of losing what they had gained. And then they watched the stock go up to $100, split, and go up to $100 again. Ironically, that same person who bought a stock at $20 will watch it go down to $3 and still hang on, hoping the price will come back up. This is an example of a person being so afraid of losing or admitting they lost that they wind up losing. Winners cut their losers and ride their winners. Winners do things almost exactly the opposite. Often, the moment they know they took a losing position, i.e., their stock price starts to go down instead of up, they will sell and take their losses. Most are not ashamed to say they took a loss because a winner knows that losing is part of the process of winning. When they find a winner, they will ride it up as far as it can go. The moment they know the free ride is over and the price has peaked, they cut and sell. The key to being a great investor is to be neutral to winning and losing. Then you don't have emotionally driven thoughts, such as fear and greed, doing your thinking for you. Losers do the same things in life. People who are afraid of losing do the same things in real life. We all know of people who stay in marriages where there is no longer any love. People who stay at dead-end jobs. People who hang on to old clothes and things they never use. People who stay in towns where they have no future. People who stay friends with people who hold them back. Emotional intelligence can be controlled. Financial intelligence is closely linked to emotional intelligence. In my opinion, most people suffer financially because their emotions are in control of their thoughts. We as human beings all have the same emotions. What determines the differences between what we do and what we have in life is primarily how we handle those emotions. For example, the emotion of fear can cause some of us to be cowards, but it also can spur others to become courageous. Unfortunately, when it comes to the subject of money, most people in our society are conditioned to be financial cowards. When the fear of losing money comes up, most people's minds automatically start chanting security rather than freedom. Avoid risk rather than learn to manage risk. Play it safe rather than play it smart. I can't afford it rather than how can I afford it. It's too expensive rather than what is it worth long term. Diversify rather than focus. What will my friends think rather than what do I think? The wisdom of risk. There is a science to taking risks, especially financial risks. One of the best books I have read on the subject of money and risk management is Trading for a Living by Dr. Alexander Elder. Although it was written for people who professionally trade stocks and options, the wisdom of risk and risk management applies to all areas of money management, personal psychology, and investing. One of the reasons many successful Bs are not always as successful as Is is because they do not fully understand the psychology behind purely risking money. While Bs understand risk when it involves business, systems, and people, that knowledge does not always translate into the systems of money making money. It's emotional more than technical. In summary, moving from quadrants on the left to quadrants on the right is more emotional than technical. If people are not able to control their emotional thoughts, I don't recommend the journey. The reason things look so risky on the right side to people on the left side is because the emotion of fear is often affecting their thinking. People on the left side think, play it safe, is a logical thought. It isn't. It's an emotional thought. And it's the emotional thoughts that keep people stuck in one quadrant or the other. What people do on the right side of the equation isn't that hard. I'm sincere when I say that it's as easy as buying 4 greenhouses for low prices, waiting until the market improves, selling them, and then buying a big red hotel. Life really is a game of Monopoly for people on the right side of the cash flow quadrant. Sure, there is winning and losing, but that's just part of the game. Winning and losing are a part of life. To be successful on the right side is to be a person who loves the game. Athletes often lose more than they win, yet they love the game. Donald Trump went broke and battled back. He didn't quit because he lost. Losing only made him smarter and more determined. Many wealthy people went broke before they became rich. It's a part of the game. If a person's emotions think for them, those emotional thoughts often blind them from seeing anything else. It's because of those knee-jerk emotional thoughts that people react rather than think. And it's emotional thinking that causes people from different quadrants to argue. The arguments are caused by people not having the same emotional points of view. It's that emotional reaction that blinds a person from seeing how easy and often risk-free things are on the right side of the cash flow quadrant. I encourage all of you who want to make the crossing to make sure you have a long-term positive support group and a mentor guiding you. The struggle Kim and I went through was worth it. For us, the most important thing about crossing from the left side to the right side was not what we had to do, but who we became in the process. To me, that is priceless.